Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Scoob. Now, Scoob is the first, well, it wasn't, but supposed to be theatrically released animated Scooby-Doo movie. And you'd think if you're going to do that, you would do sort of a typical Scooby-Doo story, like a really strong Scooby-Doo story. And since Scooby-Doo is known for a particular type of story that Hanna-Barbera ripped off constantly, this would be an easy idea of a movie. They solve a mystery, maybe it's a bigger one than normal or whatever, that's fine. Scoob is not that at all. It's clearly full of studio notes. It's trying to do a superhero thing, which doesn't really make sense from a character that isn't really that big or well remembered. It's doing like kind of the big third act tentpole kind of movie thing, and Scooby in the gang and Mr. Incorporated are just sort of attached to it, and it feels too long and all these things. But I will say this, is that, look, my daughter and I, Sophie, it was our big thing Friday after I got off work, or just clocked out since everyone works from home, that I would go and we would get ice cream and then watch Scoob. And we did that, and we had a great time, and she got really into it, and I was happy with it. To be honest, yes, I definitely know that this movie is not really great. It is sort of reminds me of another Warner Media or whatever Warner Brothers was at the time film, like Justice League. In some ways, this is the Shaggy cut. It's trying to restart all these things. It's trying to set up a Hanna-Barbera universe. It's also trying to be current. It's trying to be too many things, and I think we've seen so many of these like sort of expanded universe, cinematic universe, whatever the fuck kind of movies, and obviously none of them have really worked out that aren't Marvel. What they never really got about Scooby-Doo is that they should have given us a traditional, good Scooby-Doo mystery. Because I don't think the kids already like Scooby-Dooby-Doo. My daughter calls him Scooby-Dooby. Most little kids know the Scooby-Doo formula and like the Scooby-Doo formula. There's countless reboots and revamps of Scooby-Doo constantly going on. It is the kind of content that kids are always consuming. So trying to make it like more palpable for kids like doesn't make like any sense. So I don't know what this was appealing to, but it does appeal to kids. You have the superhero things, you have big explosions, you have big emotions, particularly the Shaggy Scooby relationship, which in a normal review, if this, someone had better structured it, I would say that is the core of this movie. It's not, but it did speak to my daughter a lot because she really cared when they like weren't friends or weren't getting along as much. That like really seemed to bother her. I think a lot of the construction of this movie is just a messy studio film. It's just they kind of sort of actually in a fun way get it to work a little bit more than I thought they would. Now part of that is the Hanna-Barbera stuff sort of works in a weird way. I mean, essentially you have a 3-act thing which should be called Scooby-Doo and the Search for Muttley, which I think would be a better title. And fuck you guys, Scoob, what is this? Post Princess and the Frog Disney? It's basically the Search for Muttley, like the whole movie, which is a total Hanna-Barbera thing and a total Hanna-Barbera lore thing. And they do certain things with the lore that I think some people would get, like the idea that Blue Falcon is the inept one, and then Dynamite is the kind of, the skilled one who can do all these things. They kind of switch places in a way. And Dynamite was really more of like a sort of Scooby-Doo kind of like character, but not really because they didn't do the structure as much. But like that, like I don't think my daughter or most kids who do not know Blue Falcon, I don't care what your market research says, did not get that joke at all. And Captain Caveman is sort of just a character in this one place. If it's sort of setting up like there's going to be a Captain Caveman movie and there was going to be a Dynamite movie, which seems like bizarre to me, or a Blue Falcon movie, just a messy studio film. And it's sort of a shame because I think Scooby-Doo's legacy with Hanna-Barbera is this kind of a structure and this kind of a story. And if you're going to make a movie out of it, you would like do that. It's like when they rebooted Star Wars, they just made a Star Wars movie. Or like when they reboot, whatever, they're like, let's do this kind of film. This is the kind of film the fans wanted. And in some ways, Scoob doesn't understand how people like Scooby-Doo in our modern context, which most kids know the old structure. Is it like something that goes even further back than Scooby-Doo, going back to like 30s radio dramas and all that stuff? Sure, but guess what? It still fucking works. It works. And like, why mess that up? The whole time I was watching it, even though my daughter was into it, and I've heard kids do get into this movie, I do think while I was watching it, like, who is this exactly for? And I do think because of all the Flash and like kids like superheroes, so you can kind of get a, like literally just like the idea of superheroes, a lot of them, you know, every kid has kind of a generic or general superhero costume nowadays. So like they're fine, like you can present them anyone. Like they all like, you know, Paw Patrol superheroes, Bubble Guppy superheroes, they're all superheroes. Dora the Explorer, maybe that happened, I don't know, who cares, doesn't matter, probably did. They kind of accept those things. And because of all the explosions and Flash, it sort of gets them, but it just like, it isn't a Scooby-Doo movie. Like, to me, it's like, yes, it is because they're in it. There's so many things about this that just didn't really work. Like, why have Zac Efron and Will Forte and Amanda Seyfried and Gina Rodriguez and Jason Isaacs and Mark Wahlberg? Like, why have them in this movie? Like, I didn't really understand why. And it's also like, if you're gonna do all this stuff with Blue Falcon, like, what are you even saying with it? It seems like it, like, wants to be, like, sort of quirky and silly. Like, why have Velma not say Jinkies and have everyone else say it? Like, I got that, but like, did the kids? No. And like, if you're not going to even tell that well, what's the even point of it? You know, it played some like nostalgic, you know, 90s stuff at the beginning, and that was kind of funny, but it's about it. I did find this movie to be a mess. It's like a movie where I couldn't guess what the structure was, and that's not a positive. Like, how long is this? Like, it just felt a little endless. Like, why collect the 3 skulls, but then you still need the dog or whatever? Like, I don't understand that one. Or is it like the 3 skulls made the, I guess they made the town, but like, why? It's just like typical, like, you know, third act or, you know, end of movie or whatever kind of things you have in a big blockbuster. You just had a blockbuster starring Scooby-Doo, but even that, you're not having any fun with it, you know? And the certain characters they picked, I'm like very curious why they even did that. They reference things from the Hex Girls to Johnny Quest to Laugh Olympics to all the, you know, various references I spotted. I'm sure someone's going to make a video. It's like every Hanna-Barbera reference in Scooby-Doo, or they're making it right now, and they're like, fuck you, Jim. I would love the Twitter account that makes that video to comment, fuck you, Jim. I would love that. So if you do, please do that. It has all those things in there. It's a very 2020 kind of setup, kind of typical studio movie. It has a little bit of more fun with it. I found it sort of enjoyable, to be honest with you, maybe because I had a 3-year-old who was into it and couldn't keep her eyes off of it and would get emotionally involved and want to talk to me about like Shaggy and Scooby, are they going to get back together and things like that. I can honestly say, like, I think like the Addams Family movie was probably worse, the recent one. This was done actually by Real FX. It was a contract work, their first since Ugly Dolls, so it's better than Ugly Dolls, I think. I totally get why people would think it's soulless and like doesn't really want to be a Scooby-Doo thing, because it doesn't. It's an IP movie. It's not a Scooby-Doo movie. It's Warner's big IP movie, and we want to sell more IP through that IP. But I think the craziest thing is like Marvel probably sells more IP, and their first movie, they established the brand of those mini franchises. And Scoob doesn't do that. They don't set up the franchise of the animated films Scoob. They set up the franchise of the animated films that are Hanna-Barbera. And I sort of, like, when I was watching this, I was like, you know, I get where this, like, sets them up, you know, for sequels and things like that. And I don't think they went to VOD because the studio didn't believe in it. They wasted a lot of money on this thing, so I think they do believe in it. It's also, like, these films are far more about selling the lunchbox and the t-shirt and the flamethrower than it is about selling Scoob. My daughter wants to watch Scoob again, so I guess I'm probably going to see it a bunch of times. But I don't know if I would see it outside of that. And I don't think, like, this film has much of a chance of really being remembered other than, you know, that film a bunch of kids watched a lot during the COVID thing or whenever this ends, like Frozen 2 or something. It'll be well remembered for that, but I don't see this going beyond that because it's just honestly not that great of a movie. It's better in its kind of like very broken, studio ripped apart, kind of noted up movie, but I can't even tell what that movie was before you had 10 writers go through it and rip it apart and everything. So as much as I kind of know, as someone who's seen a lot of bigger blockbuster movies, probably all the major ones the past 10 years or something like that, and am used to these kind of like messy, studio destroyed kind of movies, this isn't like the worst one I've seen. You know, Justice League was probably worse than Scoob, a Snyder cut or not, but I think it tries to have enough fun with it. You know, the Blue Falcon thing I thought was a little funny to switch that up. I sort of liked seeing all the references. I didn't mind Will Forte. It felt like people who didn't love Scooby-Doo trying to make Scooby-Doo more palpable, and then having some advisors who were really big fans like fix it up a little later. Like, I wish they had someone who directed this who loved Scooby-Doo and wanted to make a Scooby-Doo movie, and they understood what that was, and they made the best Scooby-Doo movie they could. And I didn't get that from anyone who made this. They wanted to make a big blockbuster starring Scooby-Doo. And maybe, because there's so many of these direct-to-VHS Scooby-Doo movies, I don't even know how many, they could have presented it in that way, or tried to act like it was that way. But this whole, like, it's the beginning of them, and all this nonsense, and a pup named Scooby-Doo at the beginning, and I don't know, it just doesn't really come together fully. It's a very enjoyable mess of a studio film starring Scooby-Doo. So should it have been called Scooby-Doo and the Search for Muttley? Absolutely. I would have liked that more, and I would have been excited going in. As, you know, I kind of thought this was more about IP than it was about movie, and I wasn't proven to be wrong by the movie that clearly just cared about IP. Is that a sad way to make the first theatrically almost released Scooby-Doo animated movie? It absolutely is. So I understand being disappointed. I understand not liking it. I understand that the script doesn't work. But from my own perspective, I also understand watching this with a 3-year-old who, you know, had her heart broken when Scooby and Shaggy might not be friends and would get scared by certain things and was confused by certain reveals and wanted to talk about it. She had a great time. So in terms of like, and she's seen a bunch of these like messy, she saw Ugly Dolls. She didn't like that. So I think like for me, seeing it through her eyes and seeing it with her, I thought it was an enjoyable time. But the cinephile in me knows better. And I think Scooby-Doo knows better too. So if you have seen Scoob and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.